Hi, this is Kaylin Salcedo, aka Mars Girl of Mars Girl Productions, and you're listening to Nerd to the Third Power.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome again to Nerd to the Third Power, your one-stop shop for all things nerdy and awesome. I'm your host and master of ceremonies, Dr. Gonzo. With me, as always, in this epic quest of awesomeness is our resident anime goddess, the one, the only, the beautiful, the Cat. Cat, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. Yeah.
Okay, well, you seem to be the only one, because everybody else is, like, gone.
Literally, I'm the only one because I'm the only other one here.
Yep. Boy, that takes me back. It's been a while since it's been just the two of us.
Yeah. Probably because of that restraining order.
You never realize just how many people we have working on the show until none of them are here, and it's just us in the studio.
I feel like if I ever end up on the show with just one other person, it's always Brian. I don't know how that always works out that way though.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just the two of us, and so we're gonna have a nice light show today. Today we're discussing the Minions effect, when mascot characters get spin-offs of their own, and the goods and bads with that. Basically, just talking spin-offs in general. So yeah, it's gonna be a nice, light, fun show. So we're gonna start as always with Ask a Geek, and we got some questions here. First question here is from Adrian. And he asks, Kat, we've had an episode devoted to E3, and Brian has had at least one episode devoted to San Diego Comic-Con. I'm wondering if the anime industry has any equivalent to E3.
It kind of does. The anime industry has its big conventions. The Japan Expo is the big one, but it's in Japan, so a lot of the news that comes out over there isn't necessarily relevant to America because a lot of that stuff is never going to actually happen over here. For North America, we have Anime Expo, which actually just happened over the weekend, and it's a little bit different than, say, E3, because E3 is going to be a lot about, like, here's some new technology that we're showcasing, and here's some new games that we're going to launch. But AX is more like, hey, here's a long list of shows that have been licensed for release in the US, and we don't have any information other than the titles and what they're about, but we don't know when we're going to release them or how we're going to release them. We just know that we've got them. So it's a lot of information. It's not as shiny, basically, as E3, but I'll actually be talking about it during my headlines. Otherwise, I would tell you a lot more.
A second question here comes from Charlie, and he asks all of us, so basically just you and me, Has there ever been a piece of music from a video game, anime, or film or television series that has moved you to tears? So, Kat, why don't we start with you on this one? Since you're the only one here. No, you, the rat in the corner. Let's start with you. What's something that made you cry?
Squeak.
The mousetrap? Yeah, that would about do it.
Depending on the episode, very specifically, like Real Folk Blues from Cowboy Bebop, like in the last episode. Piece of music that's moved me to tears. I cry a lot.
I bet I can guess one.
Oh, go guess.
When Iroh sang Brave Soldier Boy in that one episode of The Last Airbender.
Ah, how dare you even bring that up, my feels. I did not have the appropriate attire for a field trip.
Wait, what was that?
I should have had a bucket or something, or like some like raincoat if I was gonna go on a field trip.
A field trip?
A field trip. I'm on a field trip. You need to. No, I can't fault you for not spending enough time on Tumblr to have heard the term a field trip, but
because
yeah, that would about do it. There's a show that I really like. It's actually my favorite shoujo anime ever, which is Saikoku Monogatari, and the main character girl plays a biwa or an eru, however you want to call it. which is this basically a very beautiful Chinese fiddle, and the songs that are played on it and throughout the show are so sad. They're very sad sounding songs. And there's actually, between Sankoku Monogatari and Senkai Den Hoshin Engi, both of them use this instrument to really point out really sad parts in the show. So I have definitely cried over that instrument in pretty much any time I've ever seen it used in an anime, just because it's such a beautiful, beautiful sound, but it always sounds so sad.
Okay. Well, let's see. Pieces of music that have moved me to tears. Well, one that always kind of brings sort of a glisten to my eye is Vigil from the Mass Effect series. Which, for those of you who not sure which piece I'm talking about, if you're playing the very first game, it's the main menu theme, because it's used throughout the trilogy at all the most emotional points of the game, the highs and the lows. So, it could be played at a scene where, two old friends are being reunited after 2 years apart. Or probably the cruelest instance is in Mass Effect 3, when it's being played when Legion, one of your party members from the second game, winds up sacrificing himself so that his, all the rest of his people can be free and have sentience and live in peace. And it's just God, every time you play this music, either something really good happens or something really sad happens. So there's that. I'll tell you one that surprised me recently. I finally finished playing through Wolfenstein: The New Order, which, for those of you who haven't played it, it's basically sort of an alternate history, what if the Nazis had won World War II? And the main character is this soldier who spent 14 years in a coma from World War II, wakes up to see the Nazis have taken over the world. And there's this sort of underlying theme of how he's a man out of his time, and he, even if lightning strikes and he winds up overthrowing the Nazi regime, that he doesn't really have a peaceful place waiting for him afterwards. And the game ends with him essentially, dying after he takes out his arch nemesis. And the song that they play through the credits is this really beautiful song called "I Believe." And the singer is basically listing out all these things that she believes in. She believes that things will get better, that God listens to prayers, the angels will watch over us, and that everything will be fine. But then the chorus ends with "but not for me." The singer is basically saying, I believe that all this, that there is good in this world, there is peace in this world, and that everything will be all right, but it's not going to be for me. And I just when you play a game with the themes that that Wolfenstein: The New Order has, and then you cap it off with that, it was a very tear-jerky song, and I shed tears listening to it. Okay, third question here is for, again, all of us, and that is, if you could choose a piece of media for someone else in the show to try out, what would it be? So I guess the question is basically, Kat, if you would have me try out an anime, what would it be? And if I could have you try out a game, what would it be? So I guess I'll give you some time to think of an anime to try out. I've got a game that I think that you would actually enjoy. It's one that I think I've actually told you about it. It's one that I saw over the Steam summer sale this last couple weeks called Ark. It's called Ark, and I think the subtitle's Evolved or something. But it's basically it's basically one of those survival games where you've got to craft all your stuff and hunt food and build your own shelter and all that. But the twist is you're hunting dinosaurs, and you can actually tame and ride dinosaurs and use them as mounts and weapons. So I know that you're not much of a gamer, and I imagine that if you play this one, you might get pretty frustrated with it. But the fact that you could ride dinosaurs, I think, would be a big draw for you.
You know me too well. Let's see. If I had to pick an anime for you to watch, I'd probably go with Psycho-Pass. Just because I'm pretty sure you've probably never even heard of it, but it's this it's a really phenomenal show that's kind of a mindfuck kind of show. This sort of cyberpunk sort of dystopian future in which it's basically like one of your classic sci-fi movies or novels, where this dystopian future where there's some sort of computer system that predicts behavior and determines if somebody is likely to become a criminal, and then those people are contained and sort of like rehabilitated so that they don't become criminals.
So it's kind of like Minority Report.
Yes, it's exactly like that. So they have the show revolves around this police officer who's new on the job, and she's way too optimistic for the world that she lives in, and she's basically chasing down all of these criminals using people who are also criminals to help her, which is really, really cool. But there's a lot of all of these classic Minority Report kinds of themes, and there's a lot of like actual philosophy that's brought into it. It's very, very cool, and it makes you think. And I think you'd probably like something.
I know that we did add a question similar to this a couple years ago, where like someone asked like if I could, because you'd mentioned on the show that you didn't grow up watching a lot of Western cartoons, and someone asked if we could come up with a list of some that you might enjoy. And I know one of them I recommended to you was Transformers Prime. Did you ever check that out, or?
No.
You should. You'd enjoy it. I think you'd especially like the character of RC, the badass lady motorcycle. I think she reminds me a lot of you.
I was gonna say the token girl character. Are there girls other than RC?
Not girl Transformers, because the cast there's only like 5 of them. But there is one other girl, a human named Miko, who's who starts out a bit as kind of a interfering little shit, but winds up growing into a likable, quirky, kind of overly excited teenage character. But I don't know. It's just it's a really well written Transformers show just in general, and I think you'd enjoy it just in general. But like I said, the character of RC reminds me a lot of you, just because she doesn't take any shit. So that if you ever get a chance to check that out, definitely check it out, because I know you recommended Avatar to me, and I wound up loving it.
Yeah, and then you recommended the newer Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I ended up loving that. That
wasn't for the question. That was for the Ninja Turtles show we did a few weeks ago. All right. So anyway, that's all the Ask a Geek questions that we have for this week. As always, you can send them to us through the email at billysmith@channelawesome.com. And go ahead, send them in. We love hearing your questions. We are also going to be going back to putting up a weekly thread on our Facebook for Ask a Geek questions. So keep an eye out for those as well. So, but yeah, send in your questions. We love hearing them and reading them out on the air and answering your questions. So yeah, get those in. And with that, we're going to jump into what is probably going to be a very short headline segment, since it's just 2 of us, starting with Kat. So, Kat, you're up.
Why, thank you. Well, Anime Expo happened over the weekend, and there were a ton of announcements. I could list them all, but it would pretty much take the entire show. So instead, I want to take a few extra minutes longer than my normal headlines would be to talk about some of the notable things to come out of AX, and then the major licensing news. But before that, I thought it would interest some of the con-goers among our listening audience to know that Funimation has issued a statement clarifying their stance on fan art. This is important because it's con season, and this stuff's all over the internet, and it's at every convention, and people are making money off of it. And some conventions have even banned artists from selling fan art just because of the controversy surrounding copyright. Now, Funimation, one of, if not the biggest anime company in North America, is setting the record straight. I won't read their whole statement because it's a bunch of boring legal jargon, but what it basically boils down to is that there are copyrights and there are trademarks. Fan art is technically a derivative work that the copyright holder could enforce legal action on, but they won't. Funimation wants you to celebrate all of the stuff that you like and showcase your talents in artist alleys. That's cool, that's great. It's trademarks that they have to get strict on. A company can actually lose its trademark right if they don't enforce it. So Funimation will crack down on unauthorized use of their trademarks, which in this case are primarily brand names and logos. So basically, keep on doing your awesome fan art and selling it at conventions, just don't try to use the official logos or, heaven forbid, pass it off as official merchandise. Now with that out of the way, there was a big announcement. Tokyo Pop announced at AX that they are planning to return to publishing next year. In their heyday, they were the manga publisher. They had all the big titles and pretty much dominated the market. And like the Titanic, they were grand and beautiful but critically flawed and sank under their own weight. They shut down publishing operations in 2011 and have since only collaborated with a couple of partners to publish, a handful of volumes of Hetalia, the only license they actually held on to. Now they plan to license hidden gems from small or independent publishers, along with art books and possibly some light novels. They also plan to get into film and TV productions. The company already has 20 properties, both live action and animated, some of which already has content up on their YouTube channel. Said YouTube channel has a planned anime review series, and they plan on launching an app, Pop Comics, for iOS and Android that would allow users to upload their own comics for sharing while retaining 100% creative content copyright of their works. There's been rumors that Tokyo Pop was going to get back into the scene, but this is the first official word I've heard on what they plan on doing. So good luck to them, and good luck finding people who are willing to work with you after everything. Now for the licensing news, starting with the publishers. Vertical has announced they'll be releasing the Sushi Chef Tsukiyaba Shijiro nonfiction book, the Nichijo and Fuku Fuku Kitten Tales manga, and the Attack on Titan Lost Girls light novel. Viz has picked up the rights for the Best Blue swimming manga and the spin-off manga Naruto the Seventh Hokage and the Scarlet Spring. Their Shoujo Beat imprint will be releasing the Shuriken and Pleats manga by Vampire Knight author Hino Matsuri and Behind the Scenes by Oran's Hattori Bisco. Yen Press will be releasing Handa-kun, My Youth Romantic Comedy Is Wrong As I Expected, Log Horizon The West Wind Brigade, Sword Art Online Phantom Bullet and Mother's Rosario, Demonizer Zilch, and How to Raise a Boring Girlfriend manga for print. For light novels, they've licensed Another Episode S, My Youth Romantic Comedy Is Wrong As I Expected, and Bacchanal. They've also announced some titles for digital distribution only, including Aphorism, Sekire, Saki, Black Detective, Aoharu X Machine Gun, Corpse Princess, Crimson Prince, and Renaissance Eve. Kodansha Comics will release the Magatsuki, Real Account, and Jellyfish Princess manga. Now for the anime studios. Sentai Filmworks has licensed Gate Jie Taikare no Chi ni te Kakutata Kaeri, School Live Ushio and Tora, Wakaba Girl, To Love Rue Trouble Darkness Second, and Aoharu X Machine Gun. Right Stuff and Nozomi Entertainment have announced that they'll be releasing Tamayoru Hitotose, Umi Monogatari, Pita 10, A Town Where You Live, and Big Wind-Up Season 2. They also announced that they'll be releasing the Revolutionary Girl Utena anime series on Blu-ray. The Anime Consortium Japan announced that its Daisuki service will be streaming Monster Musume with English subs in Central America, some of Latin America, Indonesia, Singapore, Thailand, and the Philippines. They'll release Bikini Warriors outside of Japan, China, and South Korea. Later this year, they'll also stream Concrete Revolutio worldwide, a series that they are co-producing. They're also co-producing the upcoming God Eater anime. Crunchyroll has a nice long list of things they'll be streaming, some of which were already listed, but here we go. They'll add Princess Jellyfish, Takahashi-san is Listening, Scum's Wish, Sweetness and Lightning, The Morose Mononoke-on, Monster Musume, Million Doll, Symphogear GX, Teikyu 5, Gatchaman Crowd's Inside, Non Non Biori Repeat, Perfect Insider when it comes out in October, and English subbed episodes of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. There were a couple of other things worth mentioning that came out of AX, but that's quite enough for this week. I'll talk more about some other stuff next week.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Multiverse Headlines. I apologize for not being in the studio this week for the discussion, but I will be there hopefully next week. And also, this is sort of my pre-San Diego Comic-Con headlines. There's not a lot of news coming before San Diego Comic-Con, at least a lot of rumors floating around and things like that, but I don't try not to report too much on those. So next week, I might have a bit more, let's say, robust headlines section. But let's get things started, shall we? Last week I did talk about Marvel's Secret War post plans, all the different titles they're going to be bringing together after the Secret Wars ends, as long as their lateness doesn't sort of push back these titles. But not to be outdone, DC, with the help of USA Today, has announced several new mini-series. The reason they've announced mini-series and not full ongoing series is actually pretty smart on their end. A lot of times they usually use mini-series with smaller known characters to see if, fans really like this direction or fans really like these characters. If the mini-series sells well and sells high enough, they become sort of graduated into their own ongoing series. First up, you actually have the Metal Men, which was actually seen in the early Justice League of America books, and I think last seen in the Swamp Thing book. Speaking of Swamp Thing also has its own miniseries coming up, followed up by Katana, which is actually a little bit on the strange side, because Katana had her own ongoing series when the Justice League of America book debuted around Forever Evil, but then got cancelled out for lack of sales. See her come back as a miniseries, and that's probably a smart move, and she's been heavily noticed on the Arrow show, and also will be showing up in the Suicide Squad movie. Up next is going to be Metamorpho, and I think which actually be his debut into this new universe, and then also Poison Ivy will be getting a miniseries as well. There's actually something people have been clamoring for, it's a Poison Ivy book, so I can see if out of all these books, Poison Ivy probably has the most chance of actually graduating to an ongoing series. Also coming up is going to be Raven will be getting a new series, as well as Firestorm, and Raven being part of the Teen Titans and Firestorm book being canceled, unfortunately, as well. So it'll be interesting to see these characters, they're sort of cult characters, almost fan characters, coming back. The last one's a bit of a strange one, Sugar and Spike. Sugar and Spike is actually a very old book, and it's a very kids book about two kind of spoiled kids. How they're going to be introduced into the new 52 or the DC universe, I'm not really sure. They say they're going to be older and be operating as private investigators in the universe. This sounds less like a, hey, let's try something new, more along the lines, hey, this copyright's about to expire, we need to make something with it. So I don't expect a lot of Sugar and Spike to be really added to the universe. They're there so their IP can kind of continue on later down in life. Well, that's it for this week. Hopefully next week I'll have, like I said, way more robust news going on. So join me again, and hey, that's all the time I have this. So whoever is up next, take it away.
And that's all the headlines that we have for this week. We're going to take a quick music break. When we come back, we're going to be talking spin-offs, the good and the bad, when an ensemble dark horse winds up taking the spotlight. Stay tuned, we got a lot of fun stuff ahead. All right, and we are back. And if you've been on the internet at all in the last, I want to say 2 or 3 years, if you've even just taken a passing glance at Facebook over the last several years, you've probably seen these memes using the minions from Despicable Me. And these guys have apparently gotten so popular that they've got their own movie that came out this last weekend. We haven't seen it because, well, we have other things to do with our time. But these characters just seem to have taken off out of nowhere and really sort of eclipsed the actual main characters of the Despicable Me duology. And this isn't the first time that this kind of thing has happened. It's actually quite a common thing for mascot characters to sort of take off and get their own spin-offs. But is this necessarily a good thing or a bad thing, or is it just kind of a blatant cash grab? What kind of goes on with this? So that's kind of what we're discussing this week, is spin-offs, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I want to start with you on this, because I know that there have been a few anime series that have been spun off based on minor or mascot characters that have actually wound up eclipsing the popularity of the original series. So I want to kind of ask, what are the most notable examples of this kind of phenomenon in anime that you've seen?
Oh, that's a really good question, because I can't think of any mascots who have just totally, gotten their own thing quite in the same regard.
Really? Because I can think of a real big one that we've actually had a taste of pretty recently.
I mean, other than Pikachu or something, but...
Well, no, I was thinking Sailor Moon to Sailor V.
Oh, well, see, Sailor V was sort of a prequel more than anything else. If I were to pick something pretty recent, I would say, God knows Attack on Titan's popularity has just sort of, gone insane. But if you want to know who the character is, who's getting all of the the extra novels and the OVAs, it's certainly not the main character. It's a totally different character. It's Captain Levi, or Levy, however you want to say his name. He's the one who, the fans sort of clamored over because he's such a cool character, and now he's gotten all of these spin-off novels and an OVA and all this other stuff. It's he is way more popular than the main character. It's insane.
So now when you see something like this where a sort of minor character or ancillary character gets their own spin-off, what's your initial gut reaction?
Well, it depends on how I feel about that character, because in the case of Attack on Titan, Levy is awesome. I love him. He's a great character, and he's one of these characters that they've built an air of mystery around, so that, yeah, I totally want more information about him. But say if it were a more cutesy sort of mascot character, say Bleach had the mascot character of Kon, and they would do Kon-centric episodes that were just fucking obnoxious.
Now, I have a passive familiarity with Bleach. Kon, he's a little stuffed lion, isn't he?
Yeah. And because the TV, the TV anime had to fill in a lot more time, he became a more prominent character than, say, the manga. So, yeah. The manga doesn't give you nearly that much Kon in your face, and it's just sort of obnoxious to watch when he gets his own episodes and is just acting a fool all the time, and you're like, no, this is not interesting. Please go back to characters I care about.
Okay, so I guess this sort of phenomena isn't really as common with anime.
Well, it kind of is, kind of isn't. It's a crapshoot. I think the ones that we think of more vividly are going to be your Minions and your Penguins of Madagascar, where they are so marketable that they're getting their own franchise so that some company continues to make toys out of them. Whereas, say, something like anime or manga, there's not as much licensed goods.
There was one anime example I want to bring up because it's one that I had sort of personal experience with, but one of the few anime that I've been a fan of for many years is Tenchi Muyo. And there's a spin-off that they did of, it's called Pretty Sammy, which is based off of this one-off joke in Tenchi Universe, where they're in alternate realities and Sasami, who's the youngest character, this little 10-year-old kid, imagines that she's a magical girl. And they took that about 10 years after they did that episode, they took that concept and did a full-blown anime series out of it. And this is around the same time they're also doing Tenchi Muyo GXP. So I was like, oh, cool. I went to it not really knowing what it was. It's like, oh, cool. It's a new Tenchi Muyo series. It's got the original characters. This is right up my alley because fuck GXP. And then I sat down and I watched it and I'm just like, this show sits upon a throne of lies. This is not my world. These are not my people. Fuck it. I'm getting on that gray ship and I'm going to the Undying Lands with Frodo and Bilbo. This is not my world.
On a similar note, Fate's Stay Night, which is of course based on a bunch of games, did the exact same thing, and they decided to make Ilya a magical girl, and then you get Fate Collide Liner Prisma Ilya, and multiple seasons of Ilya as a magical girl. And I'm like, if I had to pick one character from the main series that I just really would never, ever, ever want to see ever again, I would pick her every time. God damn, I found her so annoying. And to know that she got like a spin-off like with multiple seasons, like 3 seasons at least, of her as a magical girl, like having nothing to do with the main really interesting storyline of Fate's Stay Night. It's like, man, okay, the dead horse has been beaten. Please stop. Go do something else.
There was an example of this sort of what we're calling the Minions effect in video games recently too. There's this character that Ubisoft created called Rayman, who was sort of their answer to Mario games back in the 90s. And they did a few games with him, and then in, I want to say like 2004, 2005, they did a game called Rayman Raving Rabbids, which introduced these little rabbit-like creatures who I can only describe as some unholy hybrid of, cartoon Easter bunnies, pure sugar, and pure liquefied obnoxiousness. And these characters were really popular in this game, and they wound up getting a whole bunch of games to themselves, little party games, Mario Party style games that wound up for a while eclipsing the Rayman series from which they were spawned. And it kind of got to the point where it's like, every 6 months we got a new Rabbids game, and they got to the point they got a fucking CGI cartoon series on Nickelodeon, which if you've ever watched it, if you've ever been channel surfing and you just found this and just kind of stopped to watch it, I am so sorry. There's a team of trained professionals out there who can help counsel you through the trauma that you have gone through in watching this. But it got to the point where for a while Rayman was just like completely forgotten. So when his next first game came out, which was Rayman Origins, and it didn't have the Rabbids, actually my stepbrother, who was real big into the Rabbids, fucking why, I don't know, but he saw it and was like, oh cool, they did a spin-off of Raving Rabbids. And I was like, get out!
Breathe, deep breaths. Deep breaths.
You don't belong here. But it's just, that's sort of, I think, the nadir of the proceedings for me, at least. I get kind of, it's because of stuff like that, I get this sort of feeling of dread when I see sort of ancillary characters getting their own spin-offs, because, like, I'm scared, I'm worried that it's going to wind up becoming the thing that everybody remembers, and if it sucks, then that's going to taint the rest of the series with original sin. It's the same reason why I kind of recoiled a bit when I discovered that the Metal Gear series was getting a game centered around Raiden, who, if you've ever played Metal Gear Solid 2, he's a whiny little shit throughout the whole game. It's like, okay, you're giving him his whole game. Yes, he's a cyborg ninja, but he's still going to be a whiny little shit. Thankfully, Revengeance turned out to be an alright game, if not still a stupid-ass title. But it's like, it's that level of dread that's like, okay, is this just going to taint the entirety of the series with original sin? So, that's sort of my gut reaction to that sort of thing. And I know that there have been several instances in cartoons especially where that kind of thing has occurred. The most notable one that I can think of was when they retooled the real Ghostbusters to be Slimer and the Ghostbusters, and everything was focused on that feculent green little snotwad.
Which, how is that even a character? Like, I get you can give attributes to Slimer, but how do you make that a main character?
Well, this was way back in the 80s. I was like 4 or 5 years old when this game came out. But what I recall of it from seeing it was basically, the Ghostbusters would be off doing their own thing, and then there'd just be little B plot of like Slimer interacting with like a bunch of kids or something. And it's just like, why? No, we're not here for Slimer. We're here for the Ghostbusters. Go away, Slimer. We don't like you. Yeah, so that's why I feel like this sort of sense of dread, because I know that for every one good spin-off, there's like 10 bad ones. But, for catharsis' sake, let's talk about some of those good ones. So what are some good spin-offs that you've seen in your time, Kat?
I was actually just rewatching with my roommate the first season of Heroes because it was glorious. Just to sort of get ready for Heroes Reborn or whatever it's called in the event that maybe it's okay. And Heroes did an online webisode series surrounded based on a character who came in for one episode who could control internet stuff. And I remember that was good. That was good times.
Okay. One of the good ones that I remember from my childhood, I was a huge fan growing up of Batman Beyond. And there was an episode they did called Zeta, which was basically about this military android who had escaped from his handlers and decided that he didn't want to be it was basically if the Terminator decided that he didn't want to kill anymore. And he was on the run from the government. And they wound up taking that concept and doing a short-lived spin-off cartoon series called the Zeta Project that was really well done. And great characters, great writing. And one of the things that did it that I really like, and I kind of feel kind of cheated if a spinoff doesn't do this, but it stayed in continuity with the show that spawned it. So you would see sly little references to Batman Beyond. Like the first episode, he mentioned that he escaped from Gotham, and actually the last episode of the series, they actually had a crossover with Batman Beyond in their last episode. Because one of the things that just, for some reason, it just really bothers me when a show spins off on its own thing and then it kind of exists in its own little pocket universe that has no relation whatsoever to what it came from. And I don't know, maybe it's just me, but that just feels kind of really strange to me. The best example that I can come up with of something that does this is from video games, and it's the first Miles Edgeworth Ace Attorney game. Ace Investigations game. It's a spin-off of the Phoenix Wright series. But, even though it's set in the same universe, it makes almost a concerted effort to hide a lot of the connections that are made. Even an instruction manual, it just kind of, in the character bio it says, Miles Edgeworth was a cutthroat prosecutor until a certain blue-suited defense attorney. I'm like, no, just fucking name the character. Say it. Phoenix Wright. Say it. Acknowledge where you came from. You know you know who you are. You know whose child you are. Say it. And that just bugs the fucking hell out of me. It's just a pet peeve of mine when a spinoff makes no acknowledgement of where it came from. So I guess that's just the flip side of watching, say, Star Trek The Next Generation and seeing the episode where they find, Scotty, or when McCoy shows up in the first episode going, yee, having that little fanboy moment. I get off to continuity porn, I'm sorry.
I just thought of the spin-off of things that I've enjoyed. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is a spin-off around one character who was brought in just for the movies, made up for the movies, and became so popular he got his own television show.
Yes, Coulson is amazing, but with that, and this sort of brings to sort of the crux of what makes a good spin-off and not, is they not on just Coulson's appeal, considerable as it was. They also introduced sort of their own distinctive cast of characters, their own distinctive plot lines, and yes, it kind of makes a lot of sly acknowledgments to where it came from, which I love, but it also doesn't rely entirely upon them. It stands on its own 2 feet. Because, there are shows that, or properties that will come up with some kind of spin-off, and then they'll get so entrenched in what came before that it'll just wind up, why'd you even spin this off? Why not just make it another season of, whatever show that was? The Cleve, so much of a copy of Family Guy that finally Seth MacFarlane and Fox just said, just screw it, just move him back to Quahog and just have it be Family Guy.
What was the point of the Cleveland show?
It had its moments, but other than that, it was just kind of meh.
So hey, other good spin-offs. Korra, kind of a spin-off. It didn't spin off surrounding one particular character, but it did its own thing and was the right amount of, like, homages to the original show and having original characters in it, but separating itself and distancing itself enough from the original show.
That was actually kind of one of my worries about Legend of Korra when it was first announced, was that it was just going to be a long string of like, oh, this happened in Last Airbender, and we're gonna spring off that. But no, they actually wound up taking it in a new direction, which I really loved. The moment I realized I knew I was gonna like this series was when they first went to Republic City, and they were like, automobiles and cars driving around. I was like, oh, okay, they're going somewhere new with this. I like this.
My problem with Korra was that it had such a different feel to it at first, because they built so much around the characters and not enough around the world, or outside of this small group of characters. It didn't feel quite right until later on in the show. Like it of course we all know, like, because we've talked about it so much on the show, that the show didn't really find its footing for quite a while. And then I just sort of lose my shit during the Avatar 1 episodes, where they show how he became the first Avatar, and it felt the most like the original show. And pretty much like after that, it had a better vibe to it, sort of bridging what I really like, the feeling of the original show with the current set of characters. So I think like that's a show that it was a good spin-off, but it took a while to find the right balance.
Yeah. And I have to bring this up because I feel obligated to, because it was an amazing show that got canceled before its time. But as I mentioned on the show, I'm a huge fan of the 2005 Battlestar Galactica series, which is another series, Kat, I think you would enjoy. And they did a spin-off series a few years ago called Caprica that was actually about the life on the 12 colonies before the Cylons were created, and how the Cylons got built. And it was supposed to be about the events leading up to the first human-Cylon war. Which, because it got canceled, we didn't get to see. But I think what the show's greatest strength in that case was also what wound up killing it, in that it was a show that was set in the same universe, in the same timeline, but it wasn't, Battlestar Galactica was a military drama at its heart, whereas Caprica was much more a dysfunctional family drama with sci-fi elements to it. Then like I said, there wasn't a whole lot thematically similar between Caprica and Battlestar Galactica, and I think that's what wound up killing it. Was just too different from its predecessor, that old school fans of Battlestar Galactica coming to Caprica didn't really know what to do with it. And there's also the fact that Siffi just fucking, decided to murder it, but that's a rant that I've had several times before and don't have the energy to go into again. But I think that's sort of one of the risks that you run when you do a spin-off, is there's a chance that you'll go so different that you'll alienate fans of the original. Another spin-off that I gotta bring up, because it actually wound up in many ways eclipsing the original, and that's Frasier being a spin-off of Cheers.
Oh yeah.
Talk about taking one character and making a successful spin-off out of that. 11 years that show ran, to the point where, and it again, it didn't hinge on the fact that, oh, this is Frasier, he's from Cheers, and we're gonna base the whole show around just the fact that this is Frasier from Cheers. But they wound up filling the show with its own characters and its own arcs that made it its own distinct entity, to the point where you could actually be completely forgiven for thinking that this show was just its own entity, that it hadn't sprung out of anything. And yet there were enough sly little references to, Cheers for longtime fans to kind of get a kick out of it. In fact, they even did a Cheers reunion episode in, I want to say, like season 7, so, which I thought was really neat. But that, like I said, I'm an old 80s and 90s television junkie, so make of that what you will. Now, and we talk about making shows based on one character and having it hinge solely on that, and I'm going to bring up probably one of the most idiotic examples of this, but Joey, which spun off of Friends, which was literally just This is Joey. He's from Friends. Love us.
This is kind of kicking it a little bit old school, but I used to love the show growing up called All That.
Oh God, I loved All That.
And then Amanda Bynes came on the show, and then Amanda Bynes got her own show, The Amanda Bynes Show.
Which, if we look back on Amanda Bynes' recent history, The Amanda Show was kind of a sign of things to come, if you really think about it.
They were like, hey, this is this actress who's on this show, and let's just go give her whole own show. And it was awful. It should not have happened, because that was like, I don't think anybody else from that show really went off and did their own solo show like that, because it was an ensemble.
Wrong. Keenan and Kel spun off of All That as well.
That's true, but they were together.
Yeah, and they also did their own thing, because Keenan and Kel was a sitcom, whereas the Amanda Show was just another sketch comedy show.
Right.
So it was kind of like, that's another case of a spinoff, which is like, what's the point? You're just doing more of the same, just with less characters.
Yeah.
So, and it's really telling that people remember All That. People remember Keenan and Kel. Not many people remember the Amanda Show, and the thing that most people remember about it from those that do is the one character who was, I'm Amanda's #1 fan, please, little nerdy little shit character that Amanda played, which was just obnoxious as hell, and I was scared to death that she was going to get a spinoff of her own at one point.
I don't even remember the Amanda Show other than how much I hated her. Like, I always thought her parts in All That were the most annoying. Like, because she always played these really annoying characters. And then she got her own show, and it was, like, unwatchable.
Ugh, yeah, that was,
Ugh.
it was awful. Nickelodeon did a lot of spin-off shows of that type. The last one that I remember actually being kind of recent, and it was actually unique in that it had the same characters just aged up, but that was all grown up spinning off of Rugrats. Which, if you want to talk about a mixed bag, that's one of them right there. I honestly did not know what to make of that show when it was on the air, because so much of the humor of Rugrats and so much of the appeal of it was centered around babies, innocent little don't know anything babies, and how they sort of perceive the world around them. And that was sort of their core, was that they were so young that they were kind of making up their perception of the worlds around them as they went along. And then he aged those characters up into, preteens, and it suddenly becomes just another, kind of tween sitcom. And I'm just like, it has its moments, but I really kind of feel like the core isn't there anymore. We have to address this one. As big of My Little Pony fans as we are, we have to address Equestria Girls and how that has done quality-wise over the last couple of years. Because I'll tell you what, when that was first announced, I was like scared. I was like, oh god, this is going to be awful. There is no possible way this could be any good.
And then you were right.
I don't know. I enjoy Equestria Girls. I think the movies that we've gotten so far have been pretty good. I'd like to see them kind of branch off, get their own maybe not a full-blown show, but maybe like a short little mini-series. But right now, no, I'm content with the movies. My biggest fear was that it was going to supplant Friendship is Magic, which that hasn't happened, and that was my biggest fear, because it smacked me like of what Nickelodeon and Disney like to do, is they'll come out with a spin-off and then just kind of boot the original show off the air. So I was kind of scared that we were going to see. We weren't going to get any more My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. It was just going to be all Equestria Girls all the time.
Well, not when they can. It's so much easier to make pony toys.
Yeah.
It's so easy for them to make pony toys, and as long as it's easy for them to make pony toys, they will keep on airing My Little Pony. I actually just had a thought of something that is getting its own spin-off. It hasn't happened yet, that it really could go either way, and that is the spin-offs that are in the works for Harry Potter. They just announced a stage play or something that I haven't read too many details on, and then there's going to be I believe a Magical Beasts and Where to Find Them film based around one of the textbooks featured at Hogwarts, which actually sounds awesome. I'm kind of excited for that one, and by kind of, I mean really, really excited.
See, now I'm kind of in a worried camp, because the thing is like, that whole universe was so intricately constructed and so brilliantly constructed that now we sort of have this image in our collective heads as to this, this is what there is to this universe, and it needs no more added to it, and forever shall it be. So now when I hear that something new is coming out, it's like, oh, okay, what's gonna happen here?
Well, like the magical beasts and where to find them, I think it wouldn't like change anything. It would just go, hey, so remember these creatures that you read about? Well, here's the guy who went around and discovered them, and this is how he discovered them, and it's all based off of an already established, stuff that it doesn't happen during the events of the book. They happen before the events of the book. So the world that we know of Harry Potter is happens after, like, at least magical beasts and where to find them, because it's just going to be like Newt Scamander going around and finding all these great magical beasts and putting them down into a textbook. So I think that will actually do, if it's done right. I don't know how they're going to make a plot out of it, but depending on how they do it, it should be really interesting in opening up the world of Harry Potter and expanding it a little bit, like if you were on Pottermore or something, and just giving you more information and helping a little bit to explain, like, oh, you saw all these crazy weird animals and creatures and stuff and Harry Potter, and this is why they're there, and this is where they come from, and stuff like that.
So, of course, because we are nerds, one of the things we love to do is just rampant speculation and I need, gimme. So, what are some things that you would like to see spun off?
I would like, and they wouldn't do this because they wouldn't have the star power for it, but I would actually like a supernatural spin-off featuring some of the angels. Because there are characters who are just as interesting, if not more so, than the two main characters, Sam and Dean. And I would love a spin-off backstory for like Gabriel and Lucifer and Michael and basically like all the archangels. That would be an amazing spin-off and or sort of like a mini series, or if they just did a movie of it or something to explain like all of their drama would be really juicy and fun to watch.
I'll tell you something that I would like to see get its own series, and it's kind of cheating because it's not really a spin-off, but something that was its own entity and then crossed over with something else. But I would like to see a Usagi Yojimbo series. Now, people who've read the original Usagi Yojimbo comics know who I'm talking about, but for cartoon fans of the 80s and 90s, you ever watch the old Ninja Turtles cartoon, and there was occasionally this White Rabbit samurai who would show up? That's Usagi Yojimbo.
How did that crossover even happen?
I don't know. Like, for years, I thought that the comics had spun off of Ninja Turtles, but no, it was Usagi Yojimbo was his own title before. I guess like the creator of Yojimbo was friends with Eastman and Laird, and kind of just let them use the character for the cartoon. But he showed up a few times in the original cartoon. He showed up once in the 2003 cartoon. Hasn't appeared yet in the 2012 series. But I've read some of the original comics. I would love to see a Usagi Yojimbo series done in the same animation style as the 2012 Ninja Turtles cartoon. I think that would be just amazing.
That would actually be really awesome. That would be really cool.
I would be all over that like a rash.
And if we could just have a little spin-off show with the Doctor's daughter, please.
That'd be something else to be interested in seeing, kind of seeing the spin-off with the Doctor's daughter. You know what I'd like to see get brought back though? I'd like to see Torchwood come back.
I'm not sure I would after the Stars or whoever did the North American adaptation, whatever it is they were trying to do there.
Wait, they did an American Torchwood?
It was like, I think the BBC, I don't know if they gave up Torchwood after Children of that, whatever that was, and then I don't know. Like, there was like a Stars continued the series, but it was all set in America, and it only had like two of the main characters because everyone else is dead by then. And I just remember it ran on Stars, and it was definitely, and it had like maybe Bill Pullman or Bill Paxton, one of the Bills. like, it had interesting star power.
Because they're so interchangeable.
But, like, it was weird, and it didn't really make sense, and if you hadn't seen all of Torchwood that came before it, it literally made no sense. And there was no... I don't understand what they were trying to do by bringing it and making it an American production. It didn't make sense.
Oh, yeah. Doctor Who's had a pretty storied history with spin-offs. It's had its good ones like Torchwood and the Sarah Jane Adventures. Then it's had some bad ones like K9 and Company, which was awful. Awful. So, yeah, that was... but it only aired in, like, Australia for some weird-ass reason.
Criminals, all of them. They deserve it. I'm just joking. We love you, Australia.
Alrighty. But that's all the time we have for Nerd of the Third Power this week. So sound off in the comments. What are some spin-offs that you think did well and some that really should not have been? What makes a good spin-off to you? What makes a bad one? So yeah, sound off in the comments. We love hearing from you. And that's all the time we have for Nerd of the Third Power this week. Sorry for it being such a light episode, but, you know, what do you expect? There's only 2 of us here this week. Typical craziness and antics will resume next week. So thank you as always for tuning in. As always, I'm Dr. Gonzo.
And I'm the cat.
We'll see you next week. Taka, play us out.